All right, then I think we're live. So let us know in the chat how we sounding, how we looking. But we going to get started. I'm joined by Thomas and Alem. I'm so excited to have them here. We're going to talk about lots of cool things from how they got started in coding, starting their own agencies. We'll even talk about remix and possibly at the end answer this question: should you learn to code with all this AI stuff going on? Who knows? Anyway, let's just start. I'll go by the order on my screen. So, Thomas, would you like to give us a quick introduction about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, sure. Hi, my name is Thomas. I'm based in Vienna. Um, that's in Austria, not Australia, because we just joked before about it. My IT experience is started a little bit over 20 years ago. I started with assembling PCs, real hardware, actually, not with software. Um, and I then became basically over the years started also self-taught software developer, web development. Started with, I don't know, Internet Explorer 5 or something like that, and here we are.
Nice. Awesome. Well, it's awesome to have you here and thanks for joining. And Alam, you want to give us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So, hello, my name is Alem. I'm from Bosnia. It's also in Europe. The way I started with web development is basically when I was a kid. I remember playing Call of Duty 4, and I was basically blown away by the graphics at the time. And I was like, wow, I want to do this too. And basically, like, ever since I was in fifth grade of elementary school, I knew what I wanted to do. And yeah, I went to high school, finished high school, went to college for software engineering, and finished that as well, and got into software like at my first year of college because I really wanted to learn and study at the same time. And yeah, I've been at it for like 9 years now, and I've been enjoying it ever since. I didn't go into game development, but yeah, I really enjoy web development as well, so I don't really feel like I missed much, but you never know, I maybe go into that branch as well sometime.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's so cool. Yeah, Call of Duty 4 I think was the best Call of Duty ever made, but that's just me. But anyway, but no, awesome to have you here, Alam, as well. And so, what I wanted to know, because we have a lot of viewers on this channel who are either trying to get started into coding or thinking about learning to code. And there's so many different approaches to take. I just wanted to kind of like, I'll start with you, Alam, this time. Talk about your journey, like your process of learning the code, like what route you took, and what like one tip you would give if someone is trying to learn to code.
Yeah, I think I always so my wife is basically finishing medicine, and she's about to become a doctor. And I always like draw a parallel between medicine and software engineering, because the whole field of like in of itself is so huge. Like, you can spend a lifetime trying to learn like every piece of that field, but you're not gonna be specialized in anything, and you won't have time to do it. So I kind of decided to first pick the direction I want to go in. And back then, that was web development for me. And basically, what I did was, hey, I'm gonna focus on web development. Let me try to figure out what I need to learn. And at the time, I started basically very small. I found like a 2 hour video on YouTube going over every HTML tag and what it does and how it works. And I started with that, and then I went to CSS, like learned the basics of that. And I I always took it step by step, like from the smallest things possible to the bigger ones. And when I got my first job, I started with Laravel and PHP, and I completely got lost in it because it's front end, it's back end. You have to know everything, authentication, databases, and I was basically lost. And it took me like over a year to find some sort of uh, like foundation where I can at least start understanding everything. And yeah, I think the best way, like to circle back to the beginning, the best way is to start small and go from there and just go day by day, because it's such a huge field and there's so many things to learn. And still to this day, after like 9 years, I'm still learning the basics of web development at times. So just start small and go from there.
That makes so much sense. And that's a mistake that a lot of people make, is where they do the opposite. They think that they have to learn everything. And I think I started learning like 5 programming languages all at the same time. And I became really bad at all of them. And it was like only until I realized, you know what, let me niche down just web development only, focus on HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And I literally like picked React as my framework. And even to this day, people are like, you should try this. I'm like, nah, I still, I got to focus on this like one thing. So that's pretty cool, pretty awesome. And Thomas, what's your journey been like learning to code, and some tips you would give?
I think if it all boils down to a very, very deep curiosity of how things work. It was never my intention to be a software developer, as stupid as it sounds, but it was really like I never have back then when I started. There were no YouTube, there was no Twitter or developer communities, at least not easy reachable, maybe on IRC or something like that. But so it was like, oh, somehow this must work, right? So if I create this file, and how does this work? And then the internet came, and for me it started all with 56K modems. And so my time on the internet was very limited, right? So it was like, okay, I go online and then I'm be online for 1 hour. So what I'm going to do? And and it was really just a curiosity of, okay, if I type this address in, what happens actually? How? I mean, someone has to do this, right? Someone made this. And so I started, as Alem just said, I learned about HTML. But then I learned, okay, this is static. So I understood that, okay, if I log in on a website or do something which changes the content of this website, there must be something which dynamically changes the HTML. And so I was really like this, doing this tiny little baby steps on my own. And then I learned about PHP, for instance, and Apache web server back then. And okay, I learned how to set this up. And along this way, I learned a lot about Unix and Linux. Then I've moved from Windows to Linux. And yeah, so it was really like opening up a whole rabbit hole, basically. And but I never have had imagined that this will be my job at some point. At least not at that point, back at that time.
That's so cool. That's crazy too. Like, depending where you started your learning journey, like you described a lot of stuff that you seem like you have to set up a lot of stuff manually, where in today's time, there's so many different things that you could just like start with Next.js right away and not worry about, like worrying about
Yeah.
your own like server and all that stuff. So it's kind of cool, like to kind of see that how history changed. So now we have a lot more tools that make a lot of that stuff that we used to set up manually just a little bit easier. That's awesome. And both of you, since like you both work in the industry, you learn to code, and a lot of times when people start learning to code right at the beginning, they always ask me this question, which a little bit annoying, because I feel like it's the hardest thing to do is to start a freelancing company, but some people do it backwards. So like, I want to go freelancing right away, where I feel like you need to have a job first, get the experience. And both of you have worked in the industry, and you just recently started a web dev agency called Forge 42. So I want to ask you some questions around that. First of all, like, what made you decide to do that? And actually, let me back up a little bit. Let me ask a question preface to that. How long did you both know each other, and how did you meet?
Who wants to answer the question? Alem? Should I?
Yeah, you can go ahead.
I always make, when we get this question, I always make this joke, like we met like basically everyone today met on the internet. So we really the first time we met was actually on Twitter. So back then I was still working at Amazon Web Services as a solutions architect, and I started an internal project for managing events at AWS, and I, I was still into web development, and so I, I was always following like trends like Remix, Next.js, and CSS frameworks or whatever. And so I chose Remix, and then I looked on Twitter. Okay, where is the Remix community? And I had this idea of maybe development tools would be a cool thing. And then basically I learned about Alem because he was already doing his Remix development tools. And so I wrote him on Twitter, and that was, I don't know, last year July or somewhere around that, I guess.
Yeah,
Probably
that.
yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think it was around that time. Today I was just checking how old Remix development tools are, because I know it was around this time I started with them, and I couldn't remember exactly, and it's like 11 months and a half, something like that. So I think it was around
Mhm.
that time. Yeah, he DM'd
Yeah,
me on Twitter. So
That's awesome. So the power of networking through social media, I think,
absolutely.
uh,
Yeah.
it's a very amazing story, and I'm glad you shared it because a lot of people, especially that I talk to, that are trying to get into the industry, if I ask them like, "What do you hang out? Do you reach out to people? Are you trying to meet folks?" And a lot of people are a little bit shy about it, and I always want to like preemphasize, like, trying to get a job or an opportunity, sending a resume is just such a like low level effort. You should be talking and meeting people, and this is like a great example how you both had the experience, you had something that you were looking to do, and you just found someone to team up with online, which is pretty awesome. So for all of you watching, don't underestimate the power of interacting with folks on Twitter, on social, which is pretty awesome. And what made you decide to start an agency, and what was the process like?
um, I guess I can pick that up. So both of us are very passionate about tools, and when I say tools, I mean developer tools, and that's one of the reasons I basically created Remix development tools, because I want to help other developers make their apps faster and easier. And basically, we sat down and talked about building tooling for the next generation of frameworks and everything else. And we figured out that we're going to start our dev agency. And at the moment, we just started, so it's still mostly a dev agency, but we plan to have our own products that allow you to develop faster in the future. So basically, that's like our guiding star. We want to help other developers reach their goals faster. So I think that's like the biggest reason we decided to do it, because our goals align and we both agree on what we want to do together. It's not one of those scenarios where you just want to have a project. We are very selective about what we want to do, when we want to do it, and who we want to do it with. And yeah, I think that covers it.
Yeah, yeah. To add on to that, what Alem just said, like it was really not like, hey, let's start a dev agency. It was really like more sharing the same idea about development tools, and especially our interest, the same interest on Remix. And when we spoke about like, okay, can we make this better? Can we make somehow the developer experience better? Can we change? Can we add something to this change, right? And that was basically not the idea at first to create a company around that. It was more like, hey, let's just chat about it, and let's see where we can go from here. And then at some point we said, okay, okay, that's so many different ideas, and all come together. But it makes actually only sense if we really create a company, and um, yeah, I mean, uh, as someone, you don't earn money from the day one, right? So you have to make money somehow, and that's why we as Alem just said, like we are also doing contracting work, but being very selective about like what we're doing.
Yeah, that makes sense. Awesome. And what were the challenges of like starting your freelancing agencies? Like, for instance, would you recommend for someone who doesn't have experience, let's say, working at a company, to go ahead and start an agency? The-
Can you repeat?
Oh,
I
did you hear me? Sorry.
You have a lot of static on your mic.
Oh,
It was
okay.
lower
Hold on.
before, but when you
Yeah,
did something, it's now
Oh, let me
worse.
see if I
So
can fix it. Hold on. Thank you.
but I can try to answer your question if I understood correctly. I think your question was like if we would recommend to start to work for a company and start the agency on the side, right? Working on the company. Um, I think it really depends on in which country you are in. But starting as a freelance or having at least, I wouldn't necessarily like target like being a freelance and earning money on a side. More like finding a side project, right? If that brings in money, good for you. But if you're just into the learning experience, I would recommend to find a good side project, for instance, an open source project. Always try to think of your open source project as a real product. Maybe you should even do that, right? And so build up a community, trying to do your first releases, and so on and so forth. Get in contact with your customers, your open source users, right? So there is a lot of similarities between like really doing a really good open source project, and being a freelance and finding your first customers and so on and so forth. So that would be my recommendation.
Is this sounding better? I just want to double check.
Yes, for me it
yes,
Okay,
sounds
there's
way
no
perfect.
better.
static.
Sorry about that. Technical difficulties. It's okay. I'll fix it in post. But oh, awesome. Yeah, thank you. So yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. Perfect sense. And talking more about your agencies, what kind of clients are you looking to service, and what kind of things are you planning to offer? I know you mentioned you're really kind of trying to keep the scope of what you're doing and finding clients that match your fit, but what does that include?
I think at the moment we market ourselves as a remix focused agency, and we really are. Both of us are determined to use remix for a lot of stuff, and we usually don't want to stray away from that line. We enjoy working with it. We really don't like the other solutions better than remix, so we just stick to that. And yeah, I think remix is great. uh, I mean, it's no secret that I love it with all the open source stuff I've been doing with it. But yeah, I think that's basically the clientele we are trying to gather, is people who like remix as much as we do and want to build amazing websites with it. And yeah, I think that's that about sums it up.
That's awesome. And I know you mentioned you love Remix more than other competitors, but do you want to like talk a little bit more specifically what you like about Remix that you feel you have a better developer experience? Because I'm on the same like boat, and I was a little bit confused by the announcement that the Remix team made that we could talk a little bit more, and you made an amazing video on your YouTube channel kind of clearing that up, which I'm gonna share in the link for people wondering. Alem has a great YouTube channel, but can you talk about like from the technical standpoint, what made the experience using Remix much better for you and your team?
Yeah, so for me personally, so this circles back to my philosophy when it comes to software development. I always try to pursue knowledge over money and short-term goals, and I'm always in it for the long term. And ever since I started, I always focused on how do things work under the hood, and trying to understand on a very deep level how tools and other things interact with each other. And the reason I love Remix is because it exposes the underlying technology to you and gives it to your hands and tells you do whatever you need to do. And it doesn't hide anything from you. And you can basically do whatever you want with it because it's such a thin wrapper over a server and a client environment, that it allows you to do so many things out of the box. And like so many tools, you can just see it on Twitter. If you go to Twitter every day, somebody like an open source maintainer of some random framework or tool for the client or for the server just tries to implement it in Remix, and he says, yeah, I did it in 5 minutes. And I think the biggest reason for that is because the Remix team made Remix in a way that you can do anything with it easily, and it's not a pain in the behind to do something with it. And what I hate uh, about frameworks in general if they don't give you enough power to do something on your own way. And that's why I kind of fell in love with React over the other frameworks back like in 5 or 6 years ago, because React was the only way back then, in my opinion, to basically do something however you want it and compose your project in a way you want it composed. And all the other tools were kind of opinionated on how you should do that. And that's why I loved React. And that's why I love Remix, because Remix also gives you the opportunity to do it however you want it to do. And it doesn't tell you, hey, for example, this is how we do caching, this is how we do this is the API we're going to give you. You're not going to be able to access the primitives behind caching. You have to do it through our kind of bridge between, and your hands are tied. So that's why I picked Remix over anything else.
Yeah, that makes sense. I don't know who said it, but I heard people say like if you use like framework X, you get good at that framework X. If you use Remix, you just get good at web development. And so that kind of
Yeah.
seems that that's the theme of Remix. I really enjoy Remix a lot. I think Thomas just left for a second, but I'm sure he'll be back. Yeah, I do enjoy Remix a lot for that same reason, because it allows you to do more things and it doesn't seem as bloated as like some of the other frameworks that may be out there. So let me let Thomas back in. And welcome back. Hello. Yeah. So, and let me ask you then, Thomas. Like, what was your like experience with Remix and wanting to use it?
Yeah. To answer the question, I think I have to take a few steps back actually about the background. So I've used jQuery, then I've used Angular 1 point something, and I really liked at first this two-way data binding. Angular was famous for, at least in the beginning, and then React came on the playground. And also, as I said in the beginning, I started with PHP, but I also did Java and other languages, but mainly PHP. But when in 2009, I guess, Node.js was announced, I was really I really liked the idea of being able to have like isomorphic code, like not have to switch, like Alem already said. Like I'm using PHP or this language in the back end, and in the front end I have to choose Angular, jQuery, whatever, and it's completely disconnected. And so the idea with Node.js, like finally we can use the same language, even though it's JavaScript, right, with its bad and ugly parts. But we can render basically the same in the backend in the client. But it took a long time, right? Because we are still not 100% there yet. And this is where Remix was really, because I liked React already, And then when Remix, when I tried out Remix and saw, hey, I write my code and it gets rendered on the server, right? But then it automatically also gets executed on a client side, and I actually don't have to change my development, right? I don't have to write the code 2 times. It's just the same. This was basically and that it just worked out of the box, right? I mean, I think React server components were also already mentioned somewhere, but it was not implemented somewhere. And seeing something like that with Remix, in addition to what Alem said, right, really nailed the abstractions over the web platform. Yeah, has sold me basically on it. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. I do want to have a question, just because, and your thoughts about it. Before uh, React even released, server React components, like Next.js, the unnamed framework, was, which will not be mentioned. They were the first to implement all those new features, and it almost felt like if you wanted to use, and it almost seems like the case still now, if you want to use any of those like cool React features, it's like you have to go with Next. And it seems like because they're a big company, they have like a lot of, they're really good at marketing, and it seems like they were dictating what they want, and they were the face of all the new React features coming out. So like, what were your thoughts about it? And can you also add in context of Remix where you think Remix is going, because you both use Remix a lot?
Do you want to start, Alem?
Yeah, sure. So, um, I remember back at the conference when they first announced React server components. I remember there was a lot of talk on Twitter about the fact that they were using a Canary version of React to basically provide production ready, under quotes, React server components in your Next.js projects. And I think I, as a lot of other people, were kind of scared of that because, hey, they're using Canary versions. They say they're production ready. What's going on here? And then later on, the React team said that they version their Canary versions differently. There's production ready, but it's just a naming convention, and so on and so forth. And I personally didn't like React server components when they came out. I didn't. I had a lot of questions in my mind on how exactly it worked over the wire, how it transferred stuff, and I had a very high likelihood in my head that it's going to cause stuff like leaking secrets from the server to the client. So I was really afraid of even thinking about React server components, and I think the Remix team was as well, because they spent the last like 6, 7, 8 months. I'm not even sure how long the initial announcement was made, just playing around with React server components and trying to find the right place for them in the whole React ecosystem. And I think that their best use is basically sending stuff from the server back to the client. And I have some ideas in my head how that all could work, like having like a next generation of open source npm packages where you basically import, for example, a Stripe component. You just give it the secrets on the server, and then that pipes down the whole UI to the front end without you having to set up anything. So I'm really looking forward to seeing the React ecosystem grow with React server components. But I also feel, on the other hand, with new tech, you always have to kind of take a step back, look at the bigger picture, and slow down and see what works and what doesn't work with it. Because there's no silver bullet in development, and you really need to make sure that what you built makes sense for the consumers of your frameworks, applications, whatever.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's funny that you mentioned like the consumers, like the people that are actually paying for the services a lot. And this is something that I always want to ask developers, because I think a lot of business people, they don't even ask this question. But for instance, like, do you feel that your client cares what technology you use from their standpoint, as long as the product works? And so, like, the challenge is you just use what you feel is the best workflow for you.
Thomas, do you want to answer or?
Um, yeah, I mean, I think I think you're right, right? It's on the one hand, it really depends on from which perspective you want to look at it, right? So as you just said, like from the customer or user's perspective, in the end, it doesn't bother the users at all, right? So if it works, if it's fast, if it has a great user experience, it doesn't matter what it is, right? And we as a we developers oftentimes are very uh, religious about our technology stack we have chosen, and we don't want to give it away, and we don't want to anyone to say anything bad about it. And we want to look at it like a silver bullet. And I think that's one advice I can give to any so-called junior developer or yeah, younger developers or less experienced developers. Don't look at it like religiously, and things change over time, and there's technology may be bad for this one use case, but the same technology might be very good at something else, right? And also it comes also is also important to which what is the background of the company or the development team you have at hand, right? uh, so yeah, coming back to your question, I guess it's um, if you're a developer and you want to use Next.js because you are already know it, you know how to manage it, how to handle it, you know maybe also the downsides of it, so the bad sides of it, and but you can manage it and you're comfortable managing it, go ahead. uh, Go ahead, do it. Right, if you are a PHP developer and using, I don't know, Symfony or Laravel or something like that, um, why change, right? If you are happy with it, if you have clients and you can create great user experiences, go ahead. It's just happened to be so that um, as developer you also want to have fun working. If you're really having fun developing stuff, you want to choose something where you actually have fun and you see it, right? It makes sense for me to use that. It's more powerful for me, and it's just happened that for me and for us, it's a remix.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I really enjoy Remix, and I'm hoping it continues to grow, even with like the news that it's going to be React Router 7 now. And maybe we could actually talk about that a little bit. So when I started with Remix, I was like so excited. It's like another thing that I love, and I love like the fact that at the moment, like, because there's Next, and they were like the underdog, and I was just like, I want to root for the underdog. I wanted to succeed. And for me, like, the experience with Remix was actually super simple in my brain, because I just love the concept of like you have a loader and then you have an action. And that was like so easy for me in my mind to
Yeah.
compartmentalize like the functionality, and I didn't have to think too much. And so like I really, really enjoyed it. And I was like, I hope Remix like 2 comes out. And Remix 2 came out, and then I was like, Remix 3, here we go. And then they talk about React Router 7. So I'm like, I was confused until I watched your video, Alem, but maybe you could talk a little bit about that in terms of like, what you thought about the news, and maybe give some clarification from what you understand.
Yeah, so that was a bit funny for me because I think I have 5 open source remix name packages. And when they announced it, I was like, oh boy, will I have to rename everything now? But yeah, basically, if you remember a while back, they marketed their new Vite plugin. And what they said was, hey, we're just a Vite plugin now. And like that's the whole root of it when you think about it, because when they realized, hey, we're just a Vite plugin, and they have like I think 50 between 10 and 50 times more React router users than they do Remix ones. It made sense to just change the Vite plugin from Remix to React router, and then millions of users have an easy way to migrate to the newest React version and the newest features. And the best thing about it is, if let's say you started with Create React app, it's 5 years old, you still use class components, whatever, you update to React Router version 7, it doesn't mean you have to use Remix at all. I mean, Remix as it is right now, because it's a Vite plugin, and if you don't plug it in, it's still React Router v7 with the Create React app and stuff. And then later on, you decide, okay, I want to move to Vite. You move to Vite, it's still a React Router app. And then you decide, hey, let me move to the new loading paradigm. You can move easier to React Router v7 with the loaders and everything else, the other concepts that they're adding. And then you say, okay, I want to try Remix out. You just plug it into your Vite config, and you're using the best that Remix has to offer out of the box with just 2 lines of code. And I think that's like the biggest, like the best part about all of this. Even though the Remix is going into hibernation, whatever that means, I'm guessing is gonna turn into something great in like half a year, but we still don't know yet. But this makes sense because you want your users to have a great time, and the best way to achieve that is let all your users have a great time, not just the Remix ones. Because looking at it realistically, we are the underdog, and the Remix community is very small, but the React Router community is huge. Like almost all React apps use React Router, and this just made sense from that perspective.
Yeah, you said that so elegantly, and I love that that even clarifies things even more. And I love the main takeaway for me is that you could implement all those features incrementally. So if you are, upgrading from like an older project, it's like seems like a much easier thing to do because you don't have to make all those changes all at once. That's pretty cool, pretty awesome. Um, but I still love the name.
Oh yeah,
Remixes. Yeah.
I think
yeah.
I think we will not talk about that in half a year or a year, because I think that's we're just at the looking back in a year or something like that, we will realize, okay, this was just the intersection of this diagram they have also shown, like, right. So React Route and Remix are now like have the same feature set, and Remix will whatever that means in the future will have other additional features. But I don't think it will necessarily or fundamentally change anything for a Remix developer, right? It maybe the change is that a Remix developer is basically a superset of a React router developer, if you want to call it like that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like I'm still gonna have like continue to use Remix. I love it. I think the point that you all made earlier, as a developer, pick the stack that you feel like great working in. You enjoy the process, you love the community, and just do that. There's no wrong stack. I think like for me, what I do despise where people like they talk down to people if they don't like use the framework that they want, and I'm like, listen, people are, it's a free world. We get to decide how we want to build our projects. If someone wants to use WordPress, fine, let them. It's not like a headache for you. It's like you just do your thing. And to me, I just love it because after I started using Remix, like I was forced to learn more web stuff, and I appreciated that because it made me like focus on more like the web development just standards like that are supported like natively, which was like pretty awesome. And so moving forward, let me ask another question. So uh, Remix is a full stack framework, but do you ever think of like using Remix and creating applications which still have like another API that it hits versus, so it's not like everything lives in one Remix app, but you have your Remix and it's maybe mostly like powering the front end, but you're still calling other internal APIs and
Yeah.
can you talk a little bit more about that?
So yeah, I think we just recently had we have, Alem and I have talked about this this similar topic, but one reason why I also like a Remix is because it's a very good fit for the BFF pattern, so backend for frontend pattern. So when I was working at AWS as a solutions architect, right, I had a lot of contact with startups, enterprises, and a lot of different companies, and they already have a huge software stack running somewhere, right? So and those internal services might already have APIs, but they are not necessarily like public or available for the front-end developers. So they get the task of like, create a front-end for our services. Maybe it's an internal application or a public website or something like that, or a public application. So for these cases, I think Remix is a great choice, because it fits perfectly in this BFF pattern, right? You have a server side, and from the server side, it's always a little bit easier to get access to your internal APIs, and so you don't have to think about like syncing databases or having like something so that you have access to your data. And then create an API, a public-facing one, to create a single-page application, right? So in this scenario, I think it's a great choice. When it comes to, so I wouldn't necessarily. So if I don't have to, I wouldn't necessarily like create a separate API, use Remix to access those API to have like a web application. So if I have the choice and the context in which I have to create this application doesn't mandate me to do so, no, I wouldn't. I would directly, of course, abstract your database access correctly, but wouldn't necessarily create this overhead.
What are your thoughts, Salim?
Yeah, so I think that's also a way. So it all comes back to what I said earlier. You always have options on how you want to do things, and this is another one of them. Do you want to use Remix as a BFF or backend for frontend, or do you want to run it differently? And it really all comes down to what you're building. And like Thomas said earlier, there's no silver bullet. So maybe you have some sort of backend architecture like Netflix. It wouldn't make sense to pull the data in directly. You would probably need APIs to stream it in on whatever. But if you're building some small app for your personal preferences, you want to use Remix because it's faster. It really depends on what you're building, what the circumstances are. But I think Remix is a great BFF in all meanings of the word, because it's really easy to link it to your external API and then just pull the data in. You can even maybe cache it in some ways and make it even better. For example, the Remix Client Cache library I created is a great way to do that, where you basically have a stale while revalidate cache for free, and then you can just fetch it from the API, show the data instantly, and then just hot swap it while the data loads in. So yeah, I think that's what makes Remix great. It's not a silver bullet, but it's a great bullet, and you can do a lot of things with it, and you have so many options, and it's really up to you on how you use it.
Yeah, and that's very well said because I am very lazy and I like to use as many things that make my life helpful. So I'm a big lover of headless CMSs just because that's a part that I don't have to create. And one of the reasons that I do that is because for like a lot of like corporate websites, small business websites, something like Wix or even WordPress, like it's a fine solution. But sometimes people want to either stay in like a JavaScript like ecosystem, or they want to be able to like mix things together. I think like combining Remix and a headless CMS, obviously I'm biased, I love Strappy, the best headless CMS in the world, but there's many options available. It simplifies the process, and what's cool about it, like you could have your Remix application and your content could be managed by your headless CMS, and that's something like you don't have to worry as a developer, because all you need to do is like whatever data I get from the content manager, like make sure that it all shows correctly, but I don't have to add the content. I don't have to manage the content. And I also don't have to create that admin UI panel for folks, which I think adds a lot of time to the project. So I was going to ask, and I think you did have like experience because I saw Alem, you were working with a headless CMS. Can you talk about like the project you're working on and what you like, or maybe what you don't like?
Yeah, so well, I can't talk about Strappy because I didn't use it, but I
It's
use
okay.
Story.
It's okay. It's all good.
Yeah, but so like when I started, like the first years of my career, we used a custom CMS in PHP, and I really always wanted to build my own custom CMS. And I really love CMSs because I think they're great. They are an easy way for non-developers to run their business easily. And I think like CMSs don't maybe makes much sense for developers themselves, but whenever you have to include non-technical people, it's a godsend. And basically what I'm trying to build right now is the company blog, and I've been playing around with Storyblock with it, and yeah, the experience is great because I'm not gonna talk about specifics of Storyblock, but generally the CMS approach is you go to the CMS, you write your content, you have the rich text editor, you have a million features offered with like every CMS nowadays. You link it to your Remix app. You basically fetch it on the server. You send it out to the client. You show it on the client, and you're done. And then later on, let's say in half a year, you want to change the content. You just go to your CMS and you change it, and you're done. You don't really have to write any code. You don't really have to mess around with it. And if you've been doing this for a long time, you'll know that after like half a year, when you go back to old code, you have no idea what's going on, no matter how documented and well written it is. So it's really a godsend to have like some sort of management platform where you can just change the text and it works, and you don't really have to think about it. So yeah, I really love CMSs.
Yeah, and I like the little tidbit you said that developers are developers, but for non-technical human consumers, it's a godsend. And I think that's one of the reasons why I love it, is because I'm always like interested in building projects for people, like, and I want to make sure that they have the easiest time of using the service. And a lot of times, like, and this is something that I tried, like, because I looked at, like, as I see the Strappy code base, and I'm like, oh, this is kind of cool. Let me build my own headless CMS, and Jesus Christ, that's not an easy thing to do. And I think, like,
Yeah.
you're literally saving 10,000 hours just by using whatever headless CMS you choose. And to me, it's like, it's kind of funny. And what I love about Remix and, like, using like headless CMS is that it doesn't have to be the only thing. It just could be responsible for your content, but you could add, in Remix, all the other things that you want to do, which is kind of awesome. And I love that flexibility. So, yeah, that's
I
pretty.
think that's a.
Go ahead.
Just to add on this, what you just said, right? I think that's a great test if a framework or tool or library, whatever you want to call it, chooses the right abstractions, right? And in this case, you see the power of it, right? You as you just said, like, use a headless CMS, being it Strappy, Storyblock, or whatever it is, in addition to SQL database or a key value store, or use it serverless or on a bare metal server. It doesn't matter, right? It always, yeah, that's a really great test actually. Yeah.
That's awesome. And so you just recently started your agency. What do you have planned for like next year? What are your goals?
Who is going to answer that, Alem? Go ahead, or should I?
Um, yeah, you can take this one as well.
Um, I mean, we just recently started, right? We started with trying to formalize writing down our vision, mission statements, and like to have it visibly for us. We just started our first client contract, and which is of course with Remix. Um, I think the plan for next year's or for the years to come, basically, or for the more shorter term, is really like being a crucial part or an important part in the Remix ecosystem, providing developer tools and yeah. Uh, yeah, providing great developer tools with great developer experience, and help new developers to learn web development, but also helping them to create great user experiences faster.
That's awesome.
And
Go ahead.
one more thing that I'd like to add, it doesn't really add to the question, but something that's really important is the first client that we got was also through Twitter. The client saw one of my tweets and he reached out to me, and basically we got to talking, and that's how we landed it. And I think something that a lot of developers, whether they're new or they're building for the last 20 years, really neglect is that you have to put yourself out there and talk to other people. If you're building something, market it. If you're learning, market that as well. It's all about sharing your journey and learning from it. And I personally always was very somebody who's considered an introvert, and I really don't like talking about myself and sharing my personal experiences. And when I started doing open source, I decided to change that. I created a Twitter account, and I was like, I'm gonna tweet everything I do, I'm gonna talk about it, and I'm gonna tell everybody why it's awesome. And I think that's really important for everybody to do. And if you're building something awesome, talk about it, because even if you build the best tool out there, if you don't talk about it, nobody's gonna know about it. Like a few years ago, I built like a CLI to generate React components, and I didn't tell anybody about it. I just published it on npm and hoped it's gonna be great. And it wasn't. Nobody downloaded it. Nobody knew about it at all. And I still have it on my GitHub, but it's like dead. So I think it's really important for people to share their journey, and it doesn't have to be like something, hey, I built this amazing library that everybody can use. Even if you learned how to reverse arrays in a cool way, just share it with others.
Such a good point, and that's I think where a lot of like beginner developers like miss out. Like the most important part is where obviously you need to learn the technology you're going to use, and you have to have some sort of competency. But if you're not out there talking about the things you're building, your experience, you're not going to meetups or hang out on Twitter, and nobody know you exist, it's going to be really hard for you to find opportunities. So a lot of times I get this question like, Paul, how many resumes have you sent out? And to me, it's such a weird question. It's because like my whole life, I've like before switching to like coding, I used to have like my own business, and everything was like word of mouth and talking to people. So that's something that I kind of took to this industry, is that when I switched careers, like all my friends happen to become developers and doing things that I want to do. And I always talk with them. And a lot of times it's like, I'm like, oh, I'm trying to like get a new job. I'm like, do you know any companies that are hiring? And they're like, actually like, yeah, like I know like this, the company's hiring. And I would literally ask them like, can you just like pass them my resume? And that's been literally the thing I did for like 5 jobs that I had recently. And to me, like the power of networking and making connections and sharing what you're doing far outweighs just sending out your resume. And I feel like just sending out your resume, it's just not the best strategy, or shouldn't be the only strategy used. So it's kind of cool to hear like you share that as well in terms of like how everybody should publicly interact. Because on live streams I sound very like extroverted, but I am also very introverted, and I always like keep to myself. And like you mentioned, like you do have to make that switch and to kind of start like, hey, this is what I'm all about. No, that's really cool. And I love how whenever you talk about your agency, you both smiled. You're like really, really excited, because I could tell you're doing something that you're really, really passionate about and love. And I don't want to take like too much time, so I do want to like just do some quick Q&A, and then I actually have a question for you as well, probably about AI. But in terms of like when you're working, because somebody asked like a very interesting question. This user Sky said, how to overcome feeling of embarrassment of getting to know that you are the slowest coder at your job. My CTO always gives me feedback that I am slow. And one of the things I was going to ask, because this is something that I wonder, is, what does it mean to be fast in your mind when you're coding? And do you feel like typing faster or learning like your shortcuts on your VS Code like help you to be more productive?
Good question. I think there are I mean, I don't know the user, so I don't know the exact background of the question, but it could be two things, right? So on one hand, there is, we all know probably, is the so-called imposter syndrome. I had it a lot when I started working at AWS, because there are so many great people there you meet, and they talk openly about, you just see what they are doing, right? And so everyone has imposter syndrome in their first month. So but that's really like holding you back, right? It's really not a good feeling you can have, because you really you start to forget what your journey, right? What you already are able to do, and how far you have come. So that might be one facet of the question. Like, stupid answer, but don't have imposter syndrome, or just be aware that it could be imposter syndrome, and you're not the imposter. It's just like you're learning, and you're a human being, and you will get better over time. It's just go ahead and do what you always did. If the CTO is like giving him this feeling, I don't know if that's yeah, it's not his problem, I would say. I would call that.
Yeah, I can. So because Thomas went over that, I guess I can go over a bit of a technical side. I think for me personally, the shortcuts and everything can get you so far. Like it maybe makes you like 20% faster, but there's always a cap. If you're writing as fast as you can, there's like no going over that. But for me personally, whenever I face a problem, whether it's a programming one or not, I always try to step back and see the whole. And if you're building a new feature, the best way to build it is not to just start working on it and like writing code, but rather to step back and say, okay, this feature interacts with these five other features. They're gonna have these sort of conflicts. They can interact with each other in these ways. I will need to add A, B, C, D, and E in order for it to work properly. And then after that, I need to do something else with the feature. For example, I need to test it. So if it's gonna interact with this other feature, how can I make it better so I can test it easier? And you think about all of these small little things and details, and you build a plan out in your head. And sometimes if it's really complex, I even draw it on the whiteboard behind me, even though there's a dragon on it right now. It's usually on the other side. And when I figure all the details out, that's the point when I start working. And this even maybe takes me like 1 or 2 hours, 3, 4, whatever. But it makes me build out the feature in instead of like 7 days, I build it in a day because everything's clear to me. I have to build ABCD to finish it. I just do the list and I'm done. And like that's the best advice I can give you on that, how to be faster. Because it's not about knowing like using Copilot or any other AI. It's not about being the best Vim developer with the best setup and then having like 500 strokes per second writing speed. It's just about having a good plan and figuring things out before you start working on it. Because if you start just writing code, you're gonna write something, and then after you finish, like you took 2 days, and then you realize, oh wait, this won't work because of this, and then you lost 2 days. So I think taking a step back is always the best direction.
So, like what you what you're saying, and this is a mistake I made so many times, is that coding should be the last thing you do. It's
Yes.
basically you know what you're going to do, and you just happen to like put it into code. So, take your time planning, really understand your solution. Another thing I was going to add to the user. Sometimes when your CTO gives you an answer like that, you're slow. And I'm not saying it's in your case. It's probably because they don't really know how to give you better feedback. And so when they say stuff to you like that, ask him like, hey, like, thank you for your feedback. Like, don't be rude about it, of course. I do want to like keep improving. So can you tell me what specific area do you see that I slow down? Like ask very like specific questions to get feedback, and they'll tell you the answer of the thing that you want to improve. And if they don't have an answer, it's because they themselves didn't think through it themselves, and they're just
Yeah,
saying it to you because they don't know anything else to say. So don't be shy, like asking follow-up questions. I remember when
I like the advice. I really liked it too.
think it comes from experience. I remember I used to do PRs. Not like I had somebody who reviewed my PRs, like my hiring, like whatever, the senior developer, and I would always sit there like thinking that every time I would ask a question and he would give me feedback, I always felt like he was attacking me personally, that my code sucks. And I would always be so stressed out. And then I realized he's not trying to attack you. He's actually giving you helpful feedback so you could improve the code and learn things and get better. And so I started thinking of every PR, regardless how I feel inside, I always in my mind think like it's coming from a good place where they're trying to help you to be better. And so I would put my personal feelings aside regardless how I felt, and I'd be like, this is just feedback for me to get better, and I should just take the feedback and improve those things. And over time, like I realized like, hey, that is the whole point. And I think you just need to create a better relationship with your CTO who's giving you feedback to make sure that you're both getting constructive feedback. Another question we have here from Jose, he wanted to know when you guys test new tools, how many projects do you test them before deciding that you're going to keep it and move it forward to the next one? Do you have a process for choosing tools that you're going to continue to use?
Um,
Alem?
yeah, so I mean, because it's the two of us. Actually, before answering this question, can I just say something that on top of what you said? So yesterday, so we have an employee in our company, and she does a lot of side projects that we're building, and I always review her PRs, and like I always leave like between like 40 and 80 comments. Like I nitpick the smallest things, but that's just because I want her to like be the best developer she can be, and it's like never personal. I just do it so she can improve and learn like how to write better code. And yesterday I was telling her like, hey, you did a great job here, and she thought I was being sarcastic and started asking, oh, why did I mess up now, what do I need to fix? And I was like, no, I'm complimenting you, you did a good job. Are you that afraid of me? And yeah, I think like from this senior point of view, you always want your younger colleagues to learn better and improve and not make the mistakes you did. Because I always see code and think, oh god, I did this like half a year ago, I know how this is going to break, let me just tell you why it shouldn't be done this way so you can avoid my mistakes. And I think that's like a great approach to have. And to answer the question that Jose asked, um, I personally don't even develop it in my project. What I do is I go through the whole documentation, and I spend like 2 or 3 hours reading the docs, and then I figure out, is this the right tool I need for the job? I don't even like code anything, and if it is, I create a POC just to prove that that's the right tool I need, and that's it. For example, let's say you're trying to decide what fetching library to use, and then I go to React Query, I read everything that it can do, and then I'm like, okay, this has everything I need, I'm gonna use this library. And then I look at the other library. Okay, it has also everything I need, but this one feels better for my use case because I don't know, it does caching better, for example, and the application is caching heavy. And then I go with that, and then I create a POC. But I don't really like to basically like write for 5 hours and going back and forth with the documentation and then figuring out, like after 5 hours, oh, it can't do caching at all and I need caching. Why did I spend 5 hours doing this? So that's my approach to picking tools.
That makes sense. It almost matches your other theme. Prepare first before, before coding. Know as
to
much
add
as you can. Yeah.
to add on this
That
tooling thing, just one thing. So I think a lot of these things come with experience, right? With experience, you intuitively, I don't know what it is, see, you know what questions to ask. But I think the general approach you should have is not like compare compare tools with each other, because every tool will have like this feature side or comparison side, and of course they will shine better than the other tool, of course, because otherwise they wouldn't have made the list with the check marks, right? um, um, so I think that the better approach is like, think first about what problem do I need to solve in this specific case, and then maybe write it down, and then see which of these tools are is a better fit with this problem at hand, right? And then maybe another project, it will be the other tool, but in the end you will have then two projects where you have the natural comparison of those. And if you I know it's not always possible, right? But if it's possible, always try to abstract the concrete implementation away, so it's also easier to switch afterwards.
that makes a lot of sense. And I'm gonna ask one final question, but based on what you both talking about, is that you're doing a lot of thinking and planning, and you're saving coding for last. And my channel, Coding After 30, it's like helping folks to like, switch careers into development. And we get a lot of newcomers who actually told me that they quit coding because AI is gonna code for them, as if that's like the only thing that you do. And so I wanna get your like opinion on AI, where you think it's going. Do you think it's overhyped? And should people quit their inspiration to learn to code just because AI exists?
Yeah, Thomas.
You want to go? Okay. Yeah, it's super exciting in my opinion. I'm really excited about this topic, although I'm aware that we are currently there is this diagram like of, right, it's a hype first, right, and then it goes down. I think we are currently at this top thing, but still I don't think it is the same as with like blockchain and NFT stuff, my personal opinion. I think that's different with AI. AI was there already a long time ago, but now with generative AI and these large language models, a lot of new possibilities suddenly are here, right? And when it comes to development, I think it will. I mean, I don't have. I cannot predict the future, right? And at this point, it's super hard to predict. But I think it will just get better. These large language models. So I guess you will. So first of all, no, don't quit your job, or don't stop learning development, because when electronic calculators were invented, also there are still mathematicians right now. So I think you will still need developers. Maybe the role of the developer changes over time. So maybe it's more like this architectural planning and like this laying the groundwork and giving the directions. I'm not saying the developers are like will be prompt engineers in the future only, but yeah, I don't think this will go away. Yeah, I think it will complement and will help developers to be faster, to concentrate on what's more important. Maybe we at some point we will be at the future where we don't have to write the tests anymore, but AI is so smart to write the right tests and the right amount of tests. That would be cool. I would love it. So yeah, that's my take on it.
Yeah, so from my side, I actually today saw like a meme on the internet, and it basically said, I don't want AI to be better at creating art and then letting me focus on my dishes and laundry. I want the AI to be better at dishes and laundry so I can focus on my art. And I think that's a really great meme to highlight something you need to keep in mind, because software development is not about writing software, it's about building products with software. And I think a lot of people get the two mixed up, because AI is not here to be used. I mean, it's here to write code and build your products faster. But in the end, your use case, your whole use as a software engineer is to build products for other people. You're building e-commerce platforms. You're building dashboards for companies. You're building, I don't know, the next Facebook. You're building something that's a product. You're not here just to write code and that's it. Like, you're not a factory worker just on a line and just skipping package one by one. So I think that's something to keep in mind, because uh, I see AI getting better. It's writing code better and faster, and I'm just in love with it because I can build products faster. I don't have to spend 20 days building, for example, I don't know. I don't have to spend, for example, 2 days writing tests if I can do it in 20 minutes with AI. And you just need to use AI in your favor to speed your development up, and that's it. And that's an exciting future, because you as a developer can get into the field even easier, because
Mm.
you don't have to know everything. Because before, when you, for example, even before I started, for example, in the 2000s, like, to deploy a website you probably had to know everything, like from how to write HTML, how to write CSS, how to where to deploy it, how to deploy it, who to contact, blah blah blah. And today you can just, for example, use AI to write your HTML. You don't have to know it right away by heart. And then later on, you can just learn HTML, you can learn CSS, and just take it gradually and one step at a time. So I think AI is a great benefit for everybody who's learning. First of all, because you don't have to know everything, you can rely on AI to fill in the gaps you're missing. And then you can use AI to even learn faster, because it can explain concepts to you in a clear manner in your language, among other things.
Yeah, that's such a good point, and I think what a lot of people are missing is that they thinking that it's going to be a replacement to you as a human rather than a way to make you work faster and better. And maybe that would have been a tip for Sky. It's like learn to use AI tools to be more productive faster. Who knows? But with that being said, I want to say a huge thank you for both of you jumping on. You're welcome back anytime. I'm trying to do more podcasts with like cool people, and I know we had some technical difficulties, but hopefully when I edit this, it'll be fine. Uh, for live people that tuned in today, sorry, but thank you for putting up with my technical difficulties, and thank you, Thomas and Alem. Any last words of wisdom before we go?
Thanks for inviting us. It's super interesting always to talk to different people, and also I think we're both happy to share our experiences and help others. We are both happy to help developers to learn development, because I think we're both self-taught developers to the most degree, and so we feel the pain, and so we always we are happy to share our experience.
Yeah, so from my side, I started doing open source like last year, and after I started doing open source, I also decided to try to educate others, and that's why I started my YouTube channel, and that's why I have the blog and everything, and I tweet a lot on Twitter. I try to help other people learn, and I just want to like give some advice to people who are trying to get into the field, to not be afraid and not be intimidated by everything, because this is really not something you can learn overnight. It takes years to learn web development or any other sort of development when it comes to software. So just take it one day at a time, and whenever you feel stuck, just remember it takes a lot of time to learn this. Even it took me like 2 years of like 8 hours a day every day to like get to a point where I feel comfortable enough to understand like the basics of web development. So just take it a day at a time and you'll get there.
I do have a follow-up question because you just recently started your YouTube channel, which is amazing. That's where I get all my remix help. But it's really good. So the question is, and you also mentioned blogging and sharing what you do. Do you think having a way where you either have a social profile where you're sharing blog posts or videos, do you think it's helpful for developers, or do you think that not everybody has to do it, or do you feel it's something that you should do if you want to get more exposure?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I know somebody in chat asked what if I'm shy. You don't really have to like put your face out there and your name. You can just create like a Twitter and put some random name and the anime profile picture and just code away. For example, the creator of Elysium, one of the best bun servers for JavaScript, has a like a anime profile picture, and it's called like Salty Aom or something. So you don't really have to put your face out there, but it really goes a long way to like network with people, interact, talk with people. For example, I have a friend who I met on the Remix Discord. He's from Nigeria, and just because he like talked with me and asked for advice and sometimes helped me with some of my problems, I got him a job at the previous client I worked at, just like off of reference, because I liked the guy and I thought he deserved it. So don't be like afraid to talk to others and to interact. You don't have to put your face out there. I went the extreme and put my name and surname and everything out there, but you don't have to do that.
Oh my gosh, the story of you referring your friend to your client, and something you said, because I liked him and because he deserved it, and word of mouth has so much way. I think it's like so important for folks to understand how important it is to network and make friends, because most people want to work with other people they like. And I have a funny story because the job before Strappy, I worked for this financial company that was building a product, and the guy literally told me this after he hired me. He's like, Paul, you're not the best developer, you're not the fastest, but you're so good with everybody. Everybody likes you. Everybody enjoys working with you. You're so much fun. And he's like, the technical stuff, I know you're going to learn, But just being a good, well-rounded individual that the team wants to work, he's like, that's hard for me to get. And I think that's what people want to do. They want to work with people that they could relate to, they like, and the only way people know who you are is if you reach out. And that's why I say sending resumes by itself is like literally pointless. You'll probably never get a job. But making connections with real people that could make referrals, that is amazing. I'm glad you shared that
Yeah.
story. But
And even if you, for example, help anybody, for example, on the Remix Discord, people ask a lot of questions all the time. And for example, even if you help somebody out a few times, he might just remember your name. And for example, he sees you on Twitter, he knows the handle, and he recommends you to his boss to give you a job if you're looking for a job. So it really goes a long way.
yeah, and I think Sky is back, and he's like, I feel like slow. In understanding requirements. I'm not present mode. How to get better affecting my job, my conference. I feel I should quit my dev job. We answered your question and gave some good tips. So I'll definitely say rewatch. But one thing I would say is when you get your feedback from CTO, ask him where specifically are you slowing down? Have him give you something concrete, one thing that you could start working on. But go back and rewatch the part of the stream. We did mention a lot of great advice, but I don't want to hold our guests here any longer than I have to because it is Sunday. I know it's getting late for them. So thank you so much for joining us here, Thomas and Alem, and to many more conversations. And I'll probably once in a while continue reaching out about your freelancing because that's something I want to learn more about. But thank you so much for being here, and everybody else who tuned in. Have a great rest of the weekend or evening. Bye, everyone.